Welcome to the Button the Jeans community group. My name is Rose Stein. I am the founder of this group, and I founded it because I was just sick and tired myself, right? Sick and tired of seeing so many women suffering from the blame and the shame around weight and body. And when I discovered and found that there was release and freedom from that, freedom from something that I had struggled with since I was 8 years old, that it wasn't just about my body and my weight, that there was some other things going on inside of my mind and my psyche, and taking my power back, taking control back of my life, not in that like controlling, only have this and never step outside the line and be always perfect, not that kind of control, the kind of control that comes from a deep sense of self and surrender. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Today, on Tuesdays, I come to you every Tuesday that I possibly can with what's called a power lesson. And in just a few short minutes, we're going to get some clarity on what I mean by mindless eating. So I'm going to share my screen here with you real quick because I do have a fun little PowerPoint just for you. So I'll go into presentation mode here. Great. So welcome again. I do have my Facebook page open as well. So we are live in the group. So if you have any questions or comments, or you need some clarity about any of the things that I'm saying, just feel free to go ahead and jot that in the comments. And if it's, if all's right in the world and internet land, I will be able to then answer your questions. Okay, so mindless eating. This has been a really important topic. We're actually talking about it in the coaching call with my clients today as well, kind of what that means to be more mindful. So let's talk about, there we go. What is it? So it's kind of like this idea, and again, like if we're mindlessly eating, we often aren't really aware of what's happening until there are some consequences or some side effects or something makes us aware of it, right? I mean, that's kind of the point. If we're not really conscious and really thinking about it, if we're not really having any consequences from the way that we're eating, then why would we do anything different? So congratulations. If you were here, you probably came through one of my stories that I had placed in Facebook land in the world, sharing my experience with mindless eating and what that's like. So if you're aware at all that that is something that you tend to do, you are a huge step forward than the person who is totally unaware. So we can congratulate ourselves on that. So it's kind of like, to become aware, we have to ask ourselves some questions like, do we ever find ourselves eating when we're not hungry, right? When it's not really meal time. Sometimes we don't even really want the food, and yet somehow there's this underlying just kind of habit. Sometimes I can get that when I'm like watching TV, or if I'm like stressed out or something, where like I all of a sudden find myself eating. I remember that happening distinctly. I was like, it was kind of like waking up in the pantry, like eating cookies. I'm like, what is this? What is going on here? Like suddenly I became aware that it was just this kind of mindless eating. Sometimes it's just a habit, right? It's just like I was saying. Well, I mean, when you watch a movie, you're supposed to eat, right? Well, like what if I'm not hungry? And yet that habit, that pattern that we had created over time, tells us that that's what we should be doing. And that, or sometimes we end up, with a box or a bag or a carton or whatever it is, and instead of putting like a little in a bowl, we take the whole thing thinking, oh, I'm just going to have a few. And then all of a sudden it's gone. And we're like, what happened? Or mindlessly eating can also be like snacking, right? Where it's just a little bit here, a little bit there, telling ourselves that it doesn't really count. Now, of course, the stories that I tell you are kind of extreme examples sometimes. And the story I'm going to tell was years ago. I mean, I think I was a teenager, and there was a certain dessert during Thanksgiving, and nobody else wanted it or liked it, but it was my favorite one. And so after dinner, we were all hanging out watching TV, and I went over and I cut just a sliver, right? I was like, I just want a bite. So I cut a sliver and I went back, and then I came back and I had another sliver. And because it was just a sliver, it was just a bite or two. it didn't process in my mind as like, you've had dessert, you've eaten. Like I told myself like, it doesn't matter. And that is one of the great lies that I have ever told myself. This little bit doesn't matter. And maybe if it was just that little bit, it would not have mattered. However, I didn't realize that I had kept going back and kept going back and kept going back and kept going back until it was almost gone. There was like one normal size piece left, and it like dawned on me. I kind of flashed. I became mindful in that moment and went, "Oh my God." I like thinking that it didn't matter or didn't count. I almost ate this entire thing. Like there's in that moment I realized, oh, that's kind of crazy. Like what was I thinking? So sometimes it can be a little bit here, a little bit there. We don't even realize the volume of what's happening again until we have some kind of either moment of clarity or mindfulness, or there's a consequence, right? If suddenly we're trying to quote diet or quote lose weight and we're not quote not supposed to be doing those things anymore, all of a sudden we're like just ravenous, just bored, just wanting to do it, having that, it feels like a craving, right? So sitting in front of the computer can do it, in front of the TV, making dinner, just walking by, right? If you have things on, like sometimes I'll go to people's houses and they have things like in bowls just laying around. Like, why would you do that to yourself? I'm the type of person who, like, if I see it and I'm walking past it, I want to have a little bit. Like that was my old habit of thinking. That was my old habit of action. So it's just kind of there. Well, what tends to happen though, when we're being mindless about what's going on, even if we want to be mindful, and this is where we get to the frustration, there's a disconnect between what it is that we want to do. We want to be consistent. We want to stay on the diet. We want to lose weight. We want to be healthy. We want to have energy and vitality. We want our digestive systems to feel good. We want to be able to get up off the ground after we play with the grandkids. Like there's so many things about being mindful about our eating that we want, and yet we find ourselves distracted with whatever and mindlessly eating again and again and continuing to not get results. And it really what's happening here, and I represented in this cute little picture, is this little bunny guy going, what is that? And this other person saying, oh, well, that's just my mind. And what happens is that our mind gets so full. The mind is so full, it cannot even process the present moment activities. And there are several things that can fill up our conscious mind, especially because our conscious mind is the one that's responsible for input and data, right? It's like, what are we seeing? What are we hearing? What are we feeling? What are we thinking? What are we experiencing? Like our five senses, what we touch, what we taste, what we smell, what we hear, what we see. And then of course there's that internal kind of gut feeling, that intuition. When it comes to the mind and processing data around us, we have this ability to remember things, and then also we have this ability to use our mind to think into the future. And when we have a mind that is full, it is full of, emotions from the past. It's full of the duties that we have to our loved ones or to our family or to our work, to our job. Um, there is an incredible amount of pressure, especially now. Like the holidays are a lot of pressure. It's fun, whatever, it's family and we buy stuff and all this stuff. But there's a lot of pressure that comes around the caretakers of the world, which is us typically, right? I'm generalizing right now, but I think that you understand, right? As a mother and a daughter and a wife and a lover and a co-worker and a boss, and you have so much on your shoulders right now. Okay, so when we have a mind that is full, it can only handle so much information at one time, right? We've got all of our own stuff and all of the kids stuff and all of the work stuff and all of the house stuff and all of the holiday stuff. And then we have the emotions of our own self, the emotions of our loved ones, what's going on in the world. There's so much going on that be mindful then in the moment of what we're doing and how we're self-caring. What happens is our mind gets full and we go back to those subconscious patterns and habits. And just like I was telling you, my previous pattern and habit when I was, any emotion really, just if there was food around, was to eat. And then I would have some negative consequences for it. So here's some other ways in which we end up mindlessly eating when we're distracted. Right? When we got a lot of stuff going on and our mind is distracted. And again, we go back to those subconscious patterns that we used to have before, which kind of got us to a place where we're right now, asking for some help and wanting things to be different. We come to a place sometimes when we're overwhelmed, and there's lots of other emotions that can go under this one little heading here of being overwhelmed, frustrated, lonely, disappointed, um, sad. And there's a lot of emotions that can overwhelm our senses and make it so that our mind is so full that we end up soothing and eating and going back to those subconscious patterns that got us here to begin with. There's also sometimes when mindlessly eating is because we've been stimulated in some way. Just like I was saying, commercials can do that. Talking about food, I have often, especially when it's kind of funny, especially when I'm eating really clean, I'll tend to watch like the food channel, right? Like all those food shows, and just like immerse myself in it and then wonder why I'm hungry all day. Or we can be stimulated by the food that is around, or maybe somebody is giving us some food or whatever it is, or maybe it's an emotion. Somehow we are stimulated in those patterns of thought from before. Our brain is so incredible. It takes in information from the outside world and it translates it based on what's happening on the inside. So all of your memories and all of the things that we've ever seen or heard or done are stored in this subconscious part of the mind. And when certain things are stimulated, then we end up behaving in the same way. The subconscious mind, it's not like good or bad or right or wrong. It's simply giving you the information that it has. We also can be triggered. There are some things, and this, is the same as the one we're overwhelmed and we're stimulated. It triggered is kind of a same type of experience where, um, like, let me give you an example. Being sick is a trigger for me because I have so many times in my life used that as an excuse to not take care of myself, which I understand logically that doesn't totally make sense. But when I'm not feeling well, I don't care, right? I don't care if that thing is good for me or bad for me. I'm either going to eat it if I want to eat it. I'm not going to eat it if I don't. And it's kind of like it gives me permission then to eat things that are then soothing instead of things that are actually good for my body and that my body actually needs. And so tired is another trigger for me. Again, that's been an excuse that I have used in the past to eat things that just are soothing and they don't have any nutritional value for this body, and then sabotage my efforts over and over again. And I go mindless because I don't want to think about it. I push it right out of my mind. I'm not being present in the moment and I'm not honoring this body and the tensions that I've set for myself and my health and vitality. And then, of course, hungry. Right? We can go mindless when we're hungry too. And we all know this. That's like one of the first, like basic 101 healthy. Don't bring the stuff that you don't want to be eating into the house. However, if you're hungry and you go grocery shopping when you're hungry, and we've all done this, right? And sometimes it's like, well, shoot, I should have gone grocery shopping earlier because now I have no food and now I'm hungry and now I have to go grocery shopping hungry. What ends up happening is that, again, we go mindless because we're kind of in that zone. We get very focused and there's only so much the mind can handle at one time. And say it's 5 to 7 bits of information. Well, when we're hungry, that goes down to like 3, right? Or 2 or 1. So we when we're hungry is also not a really great time to be thinking about what we are going to eat or going shopping or things like that. Okay, so there is kind of a process of this experience, right? That starts with our beliefs, and then our beliefs become our thoughts, and our thoughts become our words that we speak into the world. And those words then we defend with our actions, and our actions over time then become our habits. And the body has a memory. It's like a muscle memory. Well, so does the subconscious mind. We go into this habitual way of acting and speaking and thinking based on our beliefs. And then we have the thoughts that then reinstate and reevaluate and say yes to the thinking. And now they're in sync. It's like, okay, now I'm thinking not so healthy, and I'm feeling not so healthy. And then that creates our experience. And now our experience in the world is one that is inconsistent with what it is that we really want, because that's not the only belief that we have. I mean, think of the belief that oftentimes women come to me with, that it's just so hard. There's a belief that at a certain age or with a certain diagnosis, or if they cannot exercise, then they won't be able to lose weight and get healthy. There's a belief that at a certain age, like, you can never get your health back, or your body stops regenerating, or like the healing process ends. Now, logically, as I say this, you know that that's not true. However, if that's a belief that you're coming with, then your thoughts are going to be consistent with that. The words that you speak, right? The thoughts that you have in your mind, the words that you speak out loud. I mean, how many times have we said that to each other? Oh, well, menopause. Oh, well, I've had kids. Oh, well, I'm over 40. Oh, well, and there's these words that are speaking the truth of our thoughts based on our beliefs. And then our actions are reinforcing that. Our actions then, if that's really our belief, that it's too hard, that it doesn't, that it's not going to work anyway, that you've tried so many things in the past, then the way that we live our life, it becomes that. And then the habit is to live exactly like that. And then the feeling is the same. And then our experience is the same. So at some point there is another belief that comes in, right? Because you hear something, you see something, you see somebody else doing it, you hear their story, you begin to have like a moment of clarity, a chink in the wall, the armor that we've put up to protect ourselves, to protect all of our beliefs. And there's this little glimmer of hope. Well, if that person can do it, maybe I can do it too. And we hear story after story after story of people breaking through their own belief system, breaking through their thoughts, changing their thoughts, their words, their actions, their habits begin to change, their feelings change, their life experience changes. And you don't, it's not like one to one, right? Like you don't have to start with one. There's plenty of people that start with changing the habits, and then they realize, oh my God, my actions and my words and my beliefs have changed. And there are people that go from the beliefs and move through, and you can work on all of these different ones at the same time as well, right? So there's that little glimmer of hope that we get from each other as the spoken word, right? When somebody testifies that they have an experience that they used to think and believe and have the life experience that is similar to the one that you're wanting to change, and they changed it, and you go, aha, maybe, just maybe there's hope for me too. And you begin to think differently, and the words that you use begin to change and transform, and your actions are a little bit different, and your habits begin to transform, and then your feelings begin to soften, and there's a possibility for expansion, to have a little bit of a different life experience, to be able to wake up in the morning and throw on whatever clothes you want and go on with the day, right? The ability to eat healthy even if you don't want to have that kind of connection and belief system is so wonderful and so valuable. And it really it starts at the core of the beliefs, and that's one of the things that need to change. It is possible. It is possible. Okay, so when our mind is full, right, with all the stuff, all the beliefs, all of the thoughts, When our mind is full of all the things that we need to do and the looking outside of ourself for, um, to make us feel better, then we must rely on the beliefs and habits of the past, right? We don't have that power necessarily. So I'm just going to go back. See this picture here, the subconscious mind is all those beliefs and the habits and the consistency, the emotions, right? Our conscious mind is the where we are able to like make decisions here in this moment based on the things that we are experiencing here and now today. And there's a barrier there, right? Like not everything comes through both ways. You do have the power to say yes and to say no, but you have to be conscious. You only have that power in the present moment. And that is what is so frustrating about mindless eating, is because we really have a lack of power. There's a lack of power because we're not really being present in the moment. We're allowing those subconscious habits and patterns of thought to support us, which that's its job. It's very similar to like, I lived in the same place for 10 years, and about a year ago, I moved. And for months, every time I was driving home, I would automatically, subconsciously end up at my old house because that was I always went the same way every time to and from work. And it took my attention. I had to consciously go, oh, what am I doing, and go a different way. And I had to become conscious sooner and sooner and sooner. So I would actually go down the right road to go home instead of swinging by the old house to go to my home. It's the same thing with all of our habits. We can have feelings about it, right? There's emotion that's tied to when we eat quote unquote off our plan, or when we're mindlessly eating, or why did I eat that whole bag of whatever again? I'm never going to do it. There's all this emotion that we attach to it, but it's not emotional. The subconscious mind is not emotional. It's simply giving you what you gave it, right? The patterns and habits and thoughts and beliefs. So in the conscious moment is when we have the ability to make a change, to say, yes, I want this through and this through. No, I don't want that. And to create different habits and patterns of thought and belief. And then we get to have a whole new world. Really, our experience begins to change and transform. Now, I want to tell you about this incredible book that we're reading in my book club. It's called Cybernetics. I know that's like a very bizarre name. It's by Maxwell Maltz. And he's a very interesting guy. He grew up very poor and he wanted to be a doctor. And they said, you can't do that. Like, you have to have money to be a doctor. And this was in early, I don't even know. When was this? Let me give you some dates here. I want to say it was like 100 years ago. Wait, no, copyright 2015. Okay, but he was, anyway, in the story, it seems like he's talking about a long time ago. The basic story is that he wanted to be a doctor and they told him that he couldn't because he was poor. And then he became a doctor. And then as a doctor, he became a surgeon, a plastic surgeon. So he helped people that had like major scarring from either a birth defect or a terrible accident or whatever it was, and they needed not just to be stitched up by the emergency room, but like have, like a restructuring of their usually face, other limbs, things like that. And what was interesting is what he found. He was like one of the first plastic surgeons that went, I think that some of these people don't need plastic surgery. I think they need a therapist, right? He was one of the first people to say, you can change the outside all you want, but if you have a disrupted and your self-image, not just what you see in the mirror, but your self-image is so distorted outside of reality that you can't actually like love and appreciate yourself. It doesn't matter what you look like. And It's a very interesting book. And so, of course, he was like, well, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to study this. I'm going to figure this out. Like, how do you help people and help them really change or, come to that decision either to do the plastic surgery or not? Like, it didn't matter, but to make that change inside so that when you do have whatever change on the outside, then the insides and the outsides match. There's nothing more disappointing than getting your outsides to look a certain way, but inside you still feel ugly. Right? That's no way to live. And it was really interesting about this. But of course, they told me, like, you're a plastic surgeon, like you can't do psychology. And he was like, watch me. So he wrote this book. And it is awesome. It is one of the most fascinating, inspiring books, and he breaks it down. So when we're talking about mindfulness, how do we become successful? This is like the key. This is the kicker right here, right? Okay, yeah, Rose, I've been mindlessly eating and I got to get into the present moment. But what does it look like? What do I need to really have success? And he breaks it down into making success an acronym for needing a sense of direction, understanding, courage, compassion. Whoop, I did courage twice. Whoops. Esteem, and self confidence and self acceptance. So I'm just going to read a couple of lines in here from each of these to give us an idea of what we're talking about here. So when he's talking about a sense of direction, it is having a clear guidance and a goal, and that there's something very powerful and innate about the human experience to be able to navigate the best when we are moving, right? They say that you can't be depressed if you're in action, right? The idea is that as we move forward, that's the only constant about this life, is that it changes and it continues to change. And the more that we hold on to our old ideas and old beliefs, the more we hold on to it needing to be a certain way, and that's the only way, that's when we tend to feel lost and frustrated. So when we have a sense of direction, of some momentum, he says, functionally, a person is somewhat like a bicycle. A bicycle maintains its poise and equilibrium only so long as it's going forwards towards something. You have a good bike. You have a good bike. Your trouble is you're trying to maintain your balance by sitting still. With no place to go, it's no wonder we feel shaky. Oh, I just love that. So it's really about moving forward. He says, decide what you want out of a situation. Always have something ahead of you. Look forward to and work for and hope for. You have to have something that you're looking forward to and hoping for. When you're not goal driven, not looking forward, you're not really living. Mm. Then he talks about understanding and the importance of really understanding ourselves and what it is that we're doing. He says to deal effectively with a problem, you must have some understanding of its true nature. Most of our failures in human relations are due to misunderstandings. No one reacts to things as they are, but to our own mental images. So when we have an understanding of ourselves and why we're doing the things that we are doing and how to move forward, when we understand what the problem is, then we can have some grace to make some change. Only when we understand what it is can we respond appropriately. We must be able to see the truth, to accept the truth, good or bad. And because we will not see the truth, we cannot act appropriately. So, how important it is to really have an ability to reflect on ourselves and our life and what's going on, which leads us to the next thing, which is courage. Yeah, to really have a true understanding of ourselves, it takes courage, right? Like this whole, like, I'm going to change my life experience, I'm going to change my habits and my thoughts, like it takes courage, is very courageous. Having a goal and understanding the situation are not enough, he says. You must have the courage to act, for only by actions can goals and desires and beliefs be transformed into reality. If we wait until we are absolutely certain and sure before we act, we will never do anything. Anytime you act, you can be wrong. Any decision that you can make can turn out to be the wrong one, but we must not let this deter us from going after the goal we want. You must daily have the courage to risk making mistakes, risk failure, risk it. And once you're moving forward, you can then course correct easily, right? On that still bike, it becomes wobbly. We need to make a turn, we need to adjust, and we fall. But when we're in motion on that bike, it becomes easy to course correct, to make an adjustment, to go in a different direction. Your automatic guidance system deep inside will guide you, but it cannot guide you while you're standing still. And that leads us to one of my favorites. And this is a core concept in my program, my Perfect Fit program with my clients, is compassion. That's the number one thing that for me, I believe is missing in the weight loss industry, in a woman's transformation of really owning her own and allowing the insides and the outsides to match, is a compassion that we're not perfect and we cannot do it all. And it's okay to take care of ourselves. So he says, of all the traps and pitfalls in life, whoops, I think I skipped the compassion part. Oh, no, I was telling you about compassion. Okay. The next one is esteem. And he says that of all the traps and pitfalls in life, self disesteem is the deadliest and the hardest to overcome, for it is a pit designed and dug by your own hand, summed up in the phrase, it's no use, I can't do it. Ah, how many times I've heard that, and it breaks my heart. Breaks my heart anytime I hear a woman say that it's too much, it's too hard, she can't do it. The penalty of succumbing to it is heavy for the individual in terms of material rewards lost, but for society in gains and progress unachieved. What a woman, a powerful and strong woman, can bring to this world when she has all of her senses with her, when she has that strength and that power, that health and that beauty. There is an energy in the vitality when the mind and the body are connected in such a way that there's consistent actions in the present moment. That kind of woman is awesome. And really, it's like the esteem part, it's like that's true humility, right? That is really being right size, where you're not better than anybody else, you're not worse than anybody else, you are just living in the beauty and the grace of this moment. We simply must get it through our heads that holding a low opinion of ourselves is not a virtue, but a vice. It does no one any good to shrink and be small. So he says, stop carrying around a mental picture of yourself as defeated, worthless person. Stop dramatizing yourself as an object of pity and injustice. The word esteem literally means to appreciate the worth of. Right? Think about all the compliments that all the people have given you in your life, all the gratitude for being there and to showing up, right? Everyone that's ever looked at you and known your worth, your true beauty and your value. Do not downgrade the product merely because you haven't used it correctly. We're talking about our minds and our bodies. Don't childishly blame the product for its own errors. Like a schoolboy said, this typewriter can't spell, right? Just because we have given up our power in this moment doesn't mean that we can't grab it back. Says, for real self-esteem is not derived from the great things that we've done, the things that you own, the mark you've made, but an appreciation of yourself for what you are, a child of God. When you come to this realization, however, you must necessarily conclude that all the other people, all of them in all the countries, are to be appreciated for the same reason, which leads us to self-confidence. Now, self-confidence, he says, we destroy our self-confidence when we remember past failures, but forget about the past successes, all the things that you've done right, all the times that you did choose your self-care practices, all the times that you did plan the meals, all the times that you did go to bed all out at the right time, all the times that you did pray for somebody else, all the things that you've done. We forget these past successes. We not only remember the failures, then we impress them on our minds with emotion. We attach them to the body. We condemn ourselves. We flay ourselves with shame and remorse. Both are highly egotistical, self-centered emotions, and self-confidence disappears. And what he says is use errors and mistakes as a way to learning. Instead of failure, it's just feedback, it's information on we're bumping up against the sides again. Then dismiss those errors from the mind. Deliberately remember and picture yourself past successes. Remember all the times that you did right. Remember all the times that you showed up for yourself, all the times that you said yes when it's appropriate for you, all the times that you said no, thank you when it was appropriate for you, all those times. Which leads us to the very last part of being mindful and what success looks like is self acceptance. This is the reality. We're not going to be perfect. And there is no relief and satisfaction like that which comes when one finally gives up the shams and pretenses and is willing to be herself. Success, which comes from self expression, your voice matters. Your voice matters. I know that it's scary to speak up and to ask for help and allow somebody else to guide you. I totally get it. It's one of the scariest things I've ever done. However, your voice is needed in this world. Success, which comes from self expression, often eludes those who strive and strain to be somebody, and often comes almost of its own accord when a person becomes willing to relax and be herself. Changing your self image does not mean changing yourself or improving yourself, but changing your own mental picture, your own estimation, conception, and realization of that self. It is simply it seems major because it does make a shift, but it's a minor shift in just our perception and our feeling about ourselves. Most of us are better, wiser, stronger, and more competent now than we realize. Creating a better self image does not create new abilities, talents, or powers. It simply realizes and utilizes that which is already inside, that you already have. Self acceptance means accepting and coming to terms with yourself now, just as you are, with all your faults, weaknesses, shortcomings, and errors, and your assets and strength and beauty. Whew. Says that we must recognize our mistakes and shortcomings before we can correct them. Amen. Amen, ladies. Sing it loud and proud. There we go. That is the fullness of the mindless eating and where I see us going as we begin to change and transform that. Like, what does it mean to not mindlessly eat anymore? Is it just about the eating, or is it also something else? And after this presentation, I think it's pretty clear it's also something else. Right. So I hope that you are having a wonderful, beautiful, and blessed day. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me. Originally published in 1960. Thank you, Nancy. See, I knew. I was like, there is no way. This was like 100 years ago, this book. Okay, so 1960, we totally relate to this topic, Maria says. I find myself eating for no apparent reason, then end up regretting overeating only to repeat the same behavior again and again. Oh, I know. Girl, you are in the right place. We are, this is totally what this group is about, is coming together where we can acknowledge and identify and accept this and also move forward. Right? We don't just want to sit in the knowledge of it because then we'll just continue to repeat the same thing over and over again. We want to have some courage and get into some action around it. So I love you so much. We will be in touch. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow.